Okay, guys, so this is 5.4 honors or 4.4 math 7, okay? And what we're doing today is we're expanding expressions. In other words, we're going to use the distributive property, okay? And we've covered that in some of the other ones, but we're going to cover it in more detail today. The essential question is, how does the value of an expression change when it is expanded? Okay, so first we'll finish off example 2. Now in example 2, all they're asking you to do is to distribute or expand a variable. They make this a little confusing because they use it as t, and t is so close to a plus sign that it can be confusing. So I left this up here so you can see that when you're following along in the examples, but I'm going to change this, and I'm going to change it to y, okay, just so it's a little bit easier to see. So what I need to do first is within the parentheses, I need to determine how many terms there are. Now remember, terms are always separated by a plus, minus, or an equal sign. In other words, in this one, I have a negative 1 2/10 w and a positive 3. So 2 terms. That means I'm going to multiply both those terms by y. So I'm going to multiply it by this one, and I'm going to multiply it by this one. It seems a little weird because we're just distributing and variable, but that's all we have to do. So in other words, this becomes a negative 1 2/10 wy, because these variables should go in alphabetical order, right? And then plus 3y. And that actually ends up being your answer. Okay, so fairly simple. You can see how the y is distributed amongst both terms. Okay, so let's move on to example 3. Now, example 3, each one of these you're going to notice is a little bit tougher to understand, okay? Now, example 3, we're going to look at this again. We have negative 1/3 that we're going to distribute amongst the terms that are in here. But first, we need to identify how many terms we have. First of all, we have a positive 2, we have a negative 3x, and a positive 3. Now, one of the things we need to evaluate here is, are there any terms that we can actually combine, okay? And if you look, the negative 3x definitely cannot be combined because it's got a variable with it, where the other two do not. But that makes them so they can be combined. So what we want to do is combine those terms before we distribute. So I'm going to rewrite the negative 1/3. And then I'm going to combine this positive 2 and positive 3. Now I'm going to put the negative 3x out here first so that they're in order. Remember, the term with the variable needs to go first. And then we're going to put plus 5. Now, what's tough about this is we're going to go through and we're going to have to multiply the 1/3 by each one. So in other words, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to separate it out so you guys can see it, okay? So this becomes a negative 1/3 multiplied by a negative 3 over 1x. See how I turned that negative 3 into a negative 3 over 1, and that x is still with it, okay? So that's 1. You always put a plus sign in between, okay? Then I'm going to multiply the negative 1/3 multiplied by 5 over 1. So you can see I'm multiplying it. First, there's 2 terms, right? And I'm multiplying this number with both those terms, okay? So when I do this, I'm going to cancel out the negatives. They cancel out. The 3's cancel out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And all I end up with here is x. That's it. That all turns into x, believe it or not. Okay. Now, first thing I'm going to look at is this going to be a positive or negative outcome? It's going to be negative because I've got that negative sign there, right? And then I realize that it's just 5/3. Now, some teachers will accept this as the answer right here, but I don't like it when we have an improper fraction there. So I'm going to turn this into a proper fraction. So this actually equals x minus 1 2/3. Turn it into a mixed number. Okay, guys, 3 goes into 5 once. There are 2 left over, and you keep the same denominator. Stuff we've covered before, right? Okay, so if you need to, Pause it, write it down, do whatever you need to do. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now, each one of these gets a little bit harder, like I said. Okay, so this one is example 3. Now, with this one, I have a negative 2/5, and I'm multiplying it by 10 plus 15m minus 20n. Okay, so again, the first thing we're going to do is identify how many terms we have to distribute the number. So I've got a 10, I've got a positive 15n, and a negative 20n. Now I do an evaluation here. I go, okay, can any of these be combined? I look, the 10 cannot be combined with anything, and the m and the n are different variables, so we can't do it. So this is going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so watch how I do this. So this becomes, I'm going to multiply it by 10, I'm going to multiply it by 15m, and I'm going to multiply it by negative 20n. Okay, so this becomes, I'm going to put these each in their own parentheses, negative 2/5 multiplied by, now notice with the 10, I'm going to put it to a 10 over 1. That way I can reduce it. Now again, we're going to go through and put a plus sign in between. I'm going to do the same thing, negative 2/5 multiplied by 15 over 1 m. Okay, and another plus sign, negative 2/5 multiplied by a negative 20 over 1 n. So each one of these we're going to be able to simplify down. Okay, so the first one here. First of all, I know my outcome is going to be negative. Okay, so I'm going to bring that negative down. Do you see that? Now I'm going to look if I can cross cancel. If I have a multiplication sign in the middle, I can cross cancel. Yes, I can with the 5 and the 10. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. And we find that we get a negative 4. Okay, so it'd be a 4 over 1, negative 4 over 1, which is just a negative 4. Okay, now I'm going to look at the next one, positive or negative outcome. It's negative again, okay, because I've got this negative sign here. Okay, and even if I combine these two guys, it's still negative, right? A positive and a negative make a negative. Okay, so again, we have multiplication here, so I'm going to look if I can cross cancel. I can. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Then I multiply straight across, and this ends up being a 6. And then do not forget this variable, 6m. Okay, now we're going to do it again. Negative and negative cancel each other out. So this time it's going to be a positive outcome. Okay, I'm going to look if I can cross cancel. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And we multiply straight across, and this ends up being 8n. Now here's the problem here. I've got this answer here, and this is correct, but they are not in the correct order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the terms again, and I'm going to go through and put them in the correct order. The reason I separate the terms, guys, is you don't want to forget to bring a negative down with a negative term, okay? Because then all of a sudden you'll have the wrong answer. So I have a negative 4, a negative 6m, and a positive 8m. Now, your variables need to be in order by alphabetical order. So my negative 6m is going to be first. See how I brought the negative down with it? Then a positive 8n, okay? And then I've got the last one, which has no variable, a negative 4. And that is actually the correct answer. Okay, so once again, pause it if you need to. Make sure you ask me questions about it in class if you don't understand it. We'll go through it. Okay, one last example. Okay, so I did an Excel this time. So this one actually I'm going to make look pretty simple, but it's not as simple as it looks. Okay, so when you actually read it, it's going to look harder. This is all they're saying, and I drew it out, and they don't give you a drawing, and that's probably what makes it so difficult. They're talking about a farmer, and he's going to go through, and he's going to plant a farm, and he's going to expand his farm. So right now, he's got a farm that we don't know what the width is. It's 6, right? Sorry, the length. It's 6, or I mean it's X. Gosh, I can't talk right now. All right, so the length is X, okay? We don't know what it is, but the length is 6. And what he wants to do is he wants to expand the length so that it's 6 more, okay? 6 more feet, all right? So here's what we're looking at. This 6 right here would be multiplied by this to find the area here, which is 6x. And then this 6 would be multiplied by this to find this area, which would be 36. See how that works? And I can't combine the 36 with the 6x, so that ends up being my area. We would add those two together. The way we would look at that is like this, okay? In other words, x plus 6, x plus 6, and I multiply it by 6 on this side. So in other words, I've got two terms in here. I'm going to multiply it by this. I'm going to multiply it by this term. We get 6x plus 36, which is the same answer we had here, 6x and 36. And I'm sorry if I mixed up the length and the width there, okay? So, but that's what we're looking at, okay? That's your visualization. This is what it looks like mathematically. Okay, guys? All right, so make sure you take down all these notes. Make sure you take a picture of them, hand them in to me through the discussion, and ask me any questions. Okay, guys? We'll talk to you soon.